Thank you very much to the Honor Guard from Alexandria, and thank you to Sergeant Hampton for that beautiful rendition of the national anthem. And thank all of you for coming to join us today. My name is Bill Alexander. I'm the CEO of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, which encompasses both the memorial outside and the museum where you are right now. Of course, the memorial outside, right now we honor more than 24,000 men and women who have died in the line of duty, whose names are inscribed outside on what we view as very sacred walls. And every single year, tragically and historically, we add hundreds of new names to the wall representing those men and women who continue to die in the line of duty, serving our country, serving their communities in some law enforcement capacity. This year, we'll be adding 363 names representing those who died in 2025 and years prior. And we have the Candlelight Vigil coming in May, on May 13th. To read aloud their names on the National Mall. So you're welcome to come join us there. So that is the memorial outside. It's the cornerstone of our organizations. It's why we were founded in 1984. And in a big way, it's why we continue to exist. But over time, we have grown in part through this world-class museum that you're in right now. And I hope you all are having the opportunity to enjoy the experience here. And oftentimes when people come in, I try to stop them at the door and preface their visit with, there are lots of places you can go in our country and maybe even the world today to find where and how and why officers have made mistakes and perhaps agencies have done something untoward towards their community and even in some circumstances, even criminal activity. But that is not this place. That is not this museum. In my mind, there should be a place which helps to celebrate the profession of law enforcement. I fundamentally believe down to my genes that law enforcement has been and continues to be just an overwhelming force for good for our country and for our democracy. And so that story, in my mind, should be told. And I hope it's the story you see reflected back at you out in the exhibits that are out on the floor today. So I hope you have time to review those. And of course, go apply for one of the agencies that are out there. Law enforcement desperately need the next generation to consider a career in law enforcement. I cannot begin to tell you how rewarding that career can be. I served myself in the Prince George's County Police Department for 25 years. I just retired a couple years ago to take a role here. And like so many of my peers, I know men whose names are outside on the walls. 16 of my peers, all of whom I knew personally to varying degrees, died in the line of duty while I served, and their names are just outside on the memorial. And I am not unique. I don't say that to make the story about me. Most people in law enforcement know someone directly whose name is outside. So the profession, it is inherently dangerous, but it's incredibly, incredibly rewarding. So thank you for coming out today and helping to support us. And in the future, I hope you will continue to be mindful of the cost and service of sacrifice of so many. And I hope you'll join in the work that law enforcement is doing to protect our nation. And I really wanted to take a moment to thank our corporate partners. I have been in the audience for these kinds of things, and many times there will be corporate partners and they're thanked, and it's sort of background noise. At least historically, it was background noise to me. But since I've taken on this role here, I really do recognize the absolute fundamental need for corporate partners to participate in nonprofit efforts like ours, and we could not do it without them. So, longtime supporters here, even outside, are Verizon. And Vanavir is a new partner who's doing the exhibit for the sniper exhibit. They're sponsoring the exhibit, which is coming in 2 months. But today's big partner and the partner that has helped fund this program today is Target. They have been one of our longest and strongest supporters. I can't even begin to tell you how instrumental Target has been. And every single time they come to us, they do it without fanfare. They do it without asking for recognition. And their number one goal, beyond just supporting us in our mission and honoring the fallen and telling their stories, is to try to find ways to use their dollars to leverage even more benefit for the law enforcement community, whether that's coming up with life-saving programs or educating the public and even our own internal community about ways that law enforcement can do better or grow. And so that is part of what you're seeing today. So my incredible thanks to Target and everyone outside who's helping to support us today. And of course, I also want to thank the various partners who are with us today, many in the front here, who have helped contribute to this program. There is NAWLEE, the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives. There's the 30 by 30 initiative. There's WIFLE, which is Women in Federal Law Enforcement. and the Mid-Atlantic Women Law Enforcement Enforcement Executives, NAWLEE, I think it's pronounced. All of them have contributed to today's program, so thank you for coming out and helping to support us. Now, as I was driving in today, thinking about what I might say in terms of our keynote speaker, who I'm really privileged to introduce today, I was remembering my own time with the Prince George's County Police Department. And there is this thing in law enforcement where if you are in law enforcement, to some degree, you are sort of measuring where you are in the totem pole of law enforcement organizations. And it's not anything that's actually articulated out loud for the most part, but you're out and about and you meet someone else who is in law enforcement. Oh, where do you work? Who do you work for? And you're doing some mental measuring there, right? Just as an example, I work for the Prince George's County Police Department, about 1,800 sworn police officers. There are no less than 25 municipal police departments within Prince George's County, which are much smaller. And there are other statewide agencies that participate. Just as an example, say the Maryland National Capital Park Police. Now, I'm not in any way diminishing or disparaging the fine men and women who work for Maryland National Capital Police, but we would run into those guys, and their primary job was not to respond to 911 calls. They would go from one park to the next park to make sure that there was no loiterers or people sleeping or doing whatever they were doing in the park. All fine police work, right? But in the minds of Prince George's County police officers, that was not really police work. And so we would do some gentle ribbing with those guys like, hey, when are you going to come to a real police department and get out of the park police? Just as an example, right? So as I was driving in, contemplating the keynote speaker I'm about to introduce, there are very few, maybe no organizations in the world who are going to do any of that kind of measuring with a department that this captain has worked for probably her entire adult life. That would be the Los Angeles Police Department. In my mind, there are national police organizations, sort of a tent pole. Now, if there was someone from Chicago here, if there was someone from the NYPD here, maybe there would be a brawl about who is at the top, right? But the reality is the Los Angeles Police Department has been and continues to be definitely one of the 3 tentpole leading law enforcement organizations in the world, not just the country, definitely the world. And nobody is going to go to a captain at the Los Angeles Police Department and say, when are you going to come be the real police? So she has worked in patrol investigations, undercover vice, robbery, homicide, sexual assault investigations. She was promoted to sergeant and lieutenant and continued to work in patrol as both sergeant and lieutenant supervisory roles, and that is incredibly rare in most police careers. Once you go to investigations, most people never return to the road. And it is a real badge of honor, at least in the police world, to say, I continued to work the street. She then continued to get promoted, worked the gang impact team, worked as the chief of staff for the chief of police, and she's currently assigned as a division commander overseeing patrol operations for a major bureau where she is in charge of more than 300 police officers, all committed to serving their community and keeping the community safe. Ladies and gentlemen, she's also the current president of the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives. It's my incredible privilege and honor to introduce you Captain Julie Rodriguez from the Los Angeles Police Department. Captain.
Well, it got me all choked up, hearing somebody talk about you. I would imagine you young folks, when your parents, beam about you and talk about you. It's kind of special, right? When someone acknowledges all that work that you've done. So I want to thank you, Bill Alexander, for that wonderful presentation and opening. Josh Bronson, there you are. Thank you for putting all of this together. Can you all hear me okay? Josh used to be our chief of staff and was a fantastic partner, and y'all are very lucky to have him. And then, of course, my executive director, Jessica Tolliver, is here in the front. So thank you so much for being here, too. So I was asked a couple things to talk about, kind of my career, where I come from, how I got here, and what the future looks like. So hopefully you'll enjoy some of my comments. Right now, we're standing in a space dedicated to preserving the history of our profession. And all around us are stories of courage, sacrifice, service, and sometimes loss. This museum honors the officers who built this profession and protected their communities and paved the way for all of us to wear a badge. During Women's History Month, it feels especially meaningful to gather here because for so long, women's stories were not always included in spaces like this. But today they are. Today we are not just visitors in this museum, we are contributors to its future. 30 years from now, someone may walk through these halls and read about the women in this room. The leaders who changed policy, who mentored others, who strengthened agencies, and who reshaped policing for the better. And that is very powerful. Because history isn't just about something we remember, it's about something we build together. And when I look around this room, I see courage, I see resilience, and I see men and women who have chosen a profession that demands everything: heart, strength, and sacrifice, and we show up anyway. This is a great time for a career in policing and is worthy and an honorable profession. And as we gather to celebrate where we've been, and it's also time to shape where we're going. And we're surrounded by the history of our profession and the stories that come before us. So people often ask me, why law enforcement? And I say to them, it was not just a career choice, but a calling. I joined because I wanted to make a difference where it mattered most, and in the moments when people felt the most scared and vulnerable and unheard or unseen. I grew up in a farm in Northern California, showing horses and pigs in the county fair, and I learned responsibility before sunrise and teamwork before sunset. I was also a 3-sport athlete, and I played college volleyball. My whole life has been about, really, service and teamwork. When I joined the Los Angeles Police Department in 1996, how many of you were born in 1996? Yes, couple. Okay. The front row, did you see the front row didn't raise their hands? It's okay, y'all. I see you. I see you. It was that same esprit de corps, that feeling of camaraderie and something bigger than myself. And it's been almost 30 years I've been a cop. Sounds crazy to say that out loud. But it's about presence and trust and being the calm in somebody's chaos. Come on in. Welcome, welcome. So it's a huge responsibility, and I'm honored to have continued to serve in that space. You know, for decades, women in policing were told that we didn't fit in, that we were too compassionate, maybe too emotional, too small, too different. And yet these are the exact qualities that we now recognize in law enforcement as some of the most critical skills. Because of our emotional intelligence and who we are as people, we do de-escalate, we do communicate, we build trust and transparency, and we see the whole person, not just the problem. And research confirms what we already know, that women use less force and do get fewer complaints. But beyond the statistics, we bring something deeper. We bring humanity, we bring collaboration, and we lead with strength and empathy. So our presence changes cultures, it changes conversations, and it changes communities. And for a very long time, you know, I think for all of us, if you don't see a woman in uniform, you may not know that you could achieve it. So I often say, if you see it, you can achieve it. And I'm giving you permission to lead, permission to serve, and permission to dream bigger for yourselves. And that is why the National Association of Law Enforcement Executives matter. Because 30 years ago, women believed in something, and we couldn't wait for a seat at the table, so we built our own. NAWLEE created mentorship, training, advocacy, and a network to support other women in this profession, particularly because it was not designed for us in mind. And over 3 decades, we have developed chiefs, sheriffs, commissioners, commanders, and so on. And so it is time that we look within and stand up on the shoulders of women who came before us, who refused to accept no, and women who walked into rooms where they were not wanted and stayed anyway. And we honor them not just by remembering them, but continuing this work. So, ladies and gentlemen, where do we go next? What does the next 30 years look like? I would say our communities expect transparency, accountability, and leaders who will listen. And we are uniquely positioned to meet that moment. We must lead, we must inspire, and we must mentor. We must also prioritize wellness, and we must have the courage to innovate and challenge the status quo, because the future of policing won't look like the past, and that's a good thing. And I want you to look around at each other. You are the future of policing, and I hope that you consider this worthy profession. As I look back at my own journey from a small town girl to in the LAPD, which is still not always shocking and surprising that I'm still here and how I got here in my journey. I'm excited and I'm hopeful. And so I want you to ask yourself these 4 questions. And if law enforcement isn't in your ideas or career, that's okay too. But you all have a beautiful life ahead of you, and I'm sure many of you may be not sure what you want to do yet. But ask yourself these 4 questions. How will I lead? Who will I inspire? Who will I mentor? And what legacy will I leave behind? Because one day, another group of women, these beautiful women sitting up here, there's going to be another group of women sitting here in this very place and walk these halls and read about the generation that came before them. Let's make sure that they say we were the generation that showed up, that we lifted others, that we built bridges, that we opened doors, and we led with courage and heart. And that because of us, this profession is better than we found it. Thank you for this beautiful museum. Thank you for honoring the past and all of those who have died in the line of duty. Thank you for your leadership and service. And thank you for paving the way for the next generation of women in the policing profession. I am truly honored and humbled to have stood here before you this morning, and I thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
My name is Nicola Smith-Kea. Everyone calls me Dr. Nikki, and I'm honored to moderate our Legacy and Impact panel today. We are here to do more than just share stories. We are here to honor the trailblazers whose service has fundamentally reshaped the expectations of what women in law enforcement can achieve. We have joining us a group of esteemed panelists, some of whom I call my friends, whether or not they like it, and who we will hear from shortly. Our goal today is to reflect on how these leaders and others overcame the cultural and structural barriers of the past to build the mentorship and support networks we rely on today. We'll explore how their leadership has moved the needle on community trust, policy reform, and agency culture, effectively challenging outdated narratives to redefine what service looks like in public safety. Most importantly, we're looking ahead, identifying the next generation's opportunities for growth and representation. This forward-looking mission is the heart of my own research, Saving a Seat for a Sister, which explores how we intentionally create space so that the progress we've made continues to accelerate for those who follow. So let me start by asking each for a brief introduction and tell me your why. And I'll start with, and I won't say their names because they're capable.
Thanks. You will start with me. Good morning, everyone. I thank you all for being here. My name is Mo Brown. I am from Baltimore City. I spent 23 and a half years with Baltimore Police Department. I recently retired in 2024 as the Deputy Commissioner for Operations. That is like the number 2 seat, almost 1 seat away from the sun. But my retirement wasn't so that I can just be away from the work. that wasn't it. I wound up going to Johns Hopkins Police Department so I can start our newly formed police department, being the deputy chief of operations. And so it was a tremendous opportunity that we get once in a lifetime to be able to say that we were able to help start a police department the way that it should be. And my why is because I feel as though, you know, being on the other side, growing up in East Baltimore, in the city, police didn't necessarily understand who we were, right? They didn't have the best communications. We didn't have the best relationship. My job was to become now that bridge builder, be an advocate, to be a voice from community's perspective, but also making sure that law enforcement was doing exactly what was needed for community. So that is my why, and I'm still working very hard, even in building out a police department, to do just that.
Thank you, Chief.
I'm also a Mo, but I want to be clear. I've actually never been sworn law enforcement, and it is such an honor to be on a panel with these folks today. I'm actually an attorney by trade, and I co-founded something called the 30 by 30 initiative alongside the former chief of the Newark Police Department. And our entire goal is to make sure that police departments are not turning away qualified women, and that when women get this job, they have their needs understood and met in the organizations. It's not going to surprise you, right, that these are a lot of male-dominated institutions. And it is a great honor to spend my career making sure that biases are identified and addressed, and that women have an equitable shot at being the police leaders that we need and deserve. And my why is super simple. It's the people on this panel. I spent most of my career as an attorney at the U.S. Department of Justice. And in that work, I had the great honor of meeting so many women in positions of power across the country. And every time I got to have a discussion with them, there was just this feeling of, we need more of you, right? So that's what we do through 30 by 30. And it is so heartening to see this room full of people who are interested in possibly joining in these people's footsteps. So thank you.
So Julie Rodriguez, 30 years with the LAPD. I'm a captain, and my why has changed over time. My why now, because I failed every test I have ever taken on the department. So you promote, you have to take an exam. So for training officer, detective, sergeant, lieutenant. Thankfully, there was no test for captain, just an interview. But I failed all of those, and I thought that I wasn't smart enough or good enough. And so I found mentors and people that had been successful. And then I started to become successful. And then I worked really hard at the interviews of, you know, how to speak in a room, how to answer questions. And so I've literally spent the last 25 years helping people have a seat at the table and being in spaces that they haven't been in. And I know we'll talk about save a seat for a sister later, but I met the two women who coined that phrase and what it means to really leave a space for someone and help someone. And so that's really my purpose and passion now, is to help people, all men, women, I don't care who, you know, gender, race, ethnicity, but if you want a job, if there's something that you really want to do, if you want to drive, be a pilot for the helicopter, have a K-9, be in SWAT, you know, wherever it is, you know, I'm going to try to help you get there. So thanks, I appreciate it.
My name is Catrina Bonus. Resonates with me with Alexandria High School because I was born and raised in Alexandria on the Fairfax County side. So I grew up knowing that I wanted to be in the law enforcement profession. My mom was one of the first women in the Metropolitan DC Police in early 1970s. So when I was a safety patrol officer in 5th and 6th grade in Alexandria off North Kings Highway, I always knew that I wanted to commit myself to public service. So I joined the Secret Service in 1996 when I was a young 22. I did a great 27-year career with the Secret Service Uniform Division. I was the first female deputy chief in the 100-year history of the Secret Service. So we talk about legacy and paving the way, but also, thank you, but not just paving the way, also to being able to create opportunities that all of you, as you consider joining the profession, that are easier for you. I am currently the president of Women in Federal Law Enforcement, so here to support all of the 26,000 women throughout the federal law enforcement agencies in partnership with all of the wonderful women in the agencies and the organizations that they represent here. My why is my commitment to public service, protecting the communities that we serve, representing the communities we serve. I didn't think about this when I first joined the profession, but now as I am retired and looking back, My why is motivated by my 14-year-old teenage daughter, so she can do and be anything, and all of these opportunities are just easier for her and you when you walk in through the door in the space.
My name is Diane Goldstein. I'm a retired lieutenant from Redondo Beach Police Department in Southern California. I'm old, the gray hair. My career started in 1983. You guys weren't even thoughts in your parents' minds at that point, if your parents had even met. And I retired as the first female lieutenant in 2004 against my wishes. I was medically retired. I had some significant back issues, and I didn't ask to be retired. I went in because the good and the bad about being in law enforcement is you do get hurt. We love our job. And what ended up happening with me is I went in to just get treated for sciatica, and 18 months later, I'm retired against my will. Like, that's not what I expected. I probably would have hid that injury because I loved my job. I was the second female sergeant, and still today, the only female lieutenant. Back then, we were division commanders, so I had command of a couple different divisions and a ton of ancillary assignments. What I saw and my purpose for being here today is I didn't have access to mentors like that are sitting here. I ended up being that mentor. I didn't have a woman that I could go to teach me about leadership. And so I found the men in my department who treated me with dignity and compassion and respect and taught me what policing was, which was service to others. These were the Vietnam vets. These were the men that had deployed overseas that didn't care what you looked like, what you were. They just wanted you to treat your community well, and that they gauged their success on the absence of crime, not merely churning people through a horrible criminal justice system sometimes. We need to hold people accountable, but in community satisfaction. And so the job wasn't done until that neighbor that you helped, who was a victim or who was in the midst of conflict or any other crisis or issue, said, thank you for being there. We need you. And so my why is to ensure that policing is the best profession that it can be. It needs to be inclusive. It needs to be respectful. It needs to be humanized. And when we humanize our communities, they humanize us back. And they treat us with the honor that I think all of us here have regarding this profession. I was happenstance. I didn't want to be a cop. I got into law enforcement because I was a cocktail waitress and police officers were coming in and into the bar and the food area where I was at and convinced me to go on a ride along. That is literally how I ended up as a cop. So my why is all of you. We need you in service to others. And I think that's everyone here is saying the same thing, is we can't do it without you.
Thank you all so very much. So a fun fact, which I think we should have mentioned in the beginning, there are over 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States, about 12% women across those 18,000, 12%, and only 3% in executive leadership position. Y'all are smart, so you can figure out how small that is. Yeah. So, Catrina, I'm coming to you. You've broken one of the most significant glass ceilings in federal service. But we know that titles don't always automatically grant respect. Sometimes you have to earn it by changing the culture. Drawing on everything you learned from your mother's journey at MPD and your own 27 years in the Secret Service, what was one old school, unwritten rule you had to dismantle to lead effectively?
For me, this was personal. I saw my mom in her 20 plus year career with MPD, and I watched her have to conform to a culture, Mo mentioned earlier, that was predominantly male. So when I started the Secret Service, I committed to myself and made a conscious decision that I was not going to conform to a culture wasn't going to be someone that they wanted me to be, and how I spoke, how I showed up, how I walked into a room and being oftentimes the only woman coming into a room, and that I could be my authentic self. I could provide perspective. I could show compassion. I could handle scenes differently. So for me, the one unwritten rule that I strived to dismantle was that it's gender neutral. We don't need to conform to a culture. If you see something wrong, say something, bring it up, because you're changing a profession for the better. So again, reflecting and just recognizing that as I showed up and making and committing myself to show up with dignity, respect, authenticity, everyone else around me was going to see that, and that they were going to do the same.
Great. Thank you. Diane, I'm coming to you. You stepped into the force in the early 80s. That's a lifetime ago for many of these here, literally, and eventually became your department's first female lieutenant. We know trailblazing is often a lonely road. Looking back at those years, who were the people in your corner, the mentors, or the sanity check network that kept you grounded and kept you from walking away when things got really tough?
I mentioned early on was not even my field training officers, but kind of the real senior patrol officers who really taught me what community service was, taught me the difference between being a police officer and a peace officer. And then I think that the hard part was I had to go identify the people in the sergeant's position, in the lieutenant's, the command, the chief's position, that I had to very strategically figure out how to develop the relationship and come to them both with humility and saying, I need to learn. And when I got hired, we only had 5 female police officers. When I left the department, almost 22 years later, we only had 5 female police officers. And still today, no female sergeant and no other female in a command position. So my organization, and it was an amazing city to work for. I did multi-jurisdictional task force work. I ran a career criminal surveillance team unit. I ran a gang unit. And I think that the difficulty was that I didn't understand, if I could do my career over, is I didn't understand the importance of seeking out female leadership because I didn't have it. And it wasn't out there even in the agencies that I did tons of work for. I think back in the 1980s, I can't even remember, even LAPD was starting to have female sergeants. Even the big agencies did not have women in command. And so I had to figure it out. And I think this is the importance that nobody should have to figure it out. We should have those pre-established mentoring relationships, but there's mentors out there. You just need to have the humility to seek them out and understand you can't fix the system on your own. And that how you deal with people individually, because I think this was my secret power and my strength was that you're going to have lots of conflicts. Policing isn't easy. It's not just the external issues. That's where I found most of my passion, my purpose. The hardest part was the internal conflicts, right? Is that sometimes there were other female officers in my agency that were worse in their treatment of me than the male officers. And so because there was a system of competition that was set up. And I think all of us, the workforce in general can be very brutal. And you have to develop those conflict resolution skills that basically says, I'm not going to allow you to treat me like this in a very nice and respectful fashion. And then call out the behavior if it continues. And that's really hard to do. So it's seek it out, find them, they're there. But you have to have the strength and the humility to figure it out.
Thank you. So Deputy Chief, I'm coming to you. You've often said that to improve the system, you have to insert yourself into it. After your 24-year rise through the Baltimore Police Department to become deputy commissioner, you're now the first deputy chief at Johns Hopkins. From that vantage point, how does having women in high-ranking command positions provide the essential lens needed to shift an agency's culture from being strictly enforcers to becoming genuine bridge builders?
So I love that question. Inserting yourself into the system always means to me is that if we want to change culture, women, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I love her quote, is in all of my offices, even my home office. Women belong in any room where decisions are being made, right? We as women help to bring so much different value than most of our male partners. Not just the emotional intelligence, but we set the tone, because sometimes they forget the part where we are supposed to have humility, where we should treat people with dignity. And what our real job is to protect the Constitution and make sure we're protective of our communities that we serve. It's not us against our communities, which so often that has been the strategy, mainly because women hasn't been at the seat, at the table with voice and leading the charge. And so for me, being a female, I've had a male, of course, mentor, who actually at the time was my major and I was the captain. And he's like, you need to lead more like me. And I'm like, absolutely not. You are failing. If you really knew, right, you're not doing a really good job and you don't even have enough self-awareness to realize you're not doing a good job at it. And I say that because when our communities are looking for us to be their support, when they're calling us, they're looking for help. They're not looking for us to come in and have this authoritative figure all the time. Yes, there are cases and incidents that happens where that has to show up, right? That is, we have it. Everyone knows we have the authority. We have the right to arrest. We have arrest powers. We can take your freedom away, all those things. But is that the best case scenario in the way that we should really be approaching whatever is happening? Most of the time when folks call us, it is in the worst day of their life. Wherever they lost property, something as simple as losing something, right? To the most sensitive where loss of life has occurred. I love using this analogy because it was critically important even in my leadership. Is, you have community who calls you because street lights are out. They shouldn't even be calling the police in the first place, but we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are the ones who are going to respond. Most times city agencies, we'll see you about 3 weeks and we'll come replace this light. We're going to come in with a public safety lens to say, hey, listen, I don't want robberies. I don't want a shooting. I don't want a homicide. We're coming in to be protective of the community because, hey, we add that extra barrier of safety. But very quickly, we switch. Now we're starting to pull over people in the community because they have expired tags or because the weather doesn't match how you're dressed, and you never even asked us to be there in the first place. So when you are building initiatives and building strategies as much as I have throughout my career, I've brought community with me. Not just from that seat to say, hey, listen, community is important. We value community. This is where our thoughts are. No, I have a community partner that would be a great problem solver that should be at this table right now helping us strategize on the initiative that we're bringing, because law enforcement will bring lots of great ideas and abandon them when the next person brings the next great idea. And what happens is because we partner with city government, community no longer trusts either of us. And so bringing community along and building initiatives and strategies with community at the table, strategizing to say, yep, that's what we want. We prefer it to be like this because we have a real need for it. And so for me, mine has always been, even though Save a Seat for a Sister is definitely in that same realm, but making sure that we always are in the room making decisions so that folks are not too far strayed away, but bringing other sisters, partners, and definitely community along at the table.
Thank you. So we know that narrative matters, right? I think it was probably 6 years ago, a police department from New Zealand came. And for 3 days, I kept saying law enforcement. And they stopped me on the third day and said, why do you use that term? And you hear my accent. I'm Jamaican. We don't use the term law enforcement back home. And so we use policing or in some situation, peace officers. And I want you all to realize that majority of what our police or uniformed police officers do is not necessarily enforce the law. They're checking in on people. They're doing wellness checks. They're listening to individuals who have no one else to talk to, and they're calling them 4 or 5 times a day. And so I wanted you to understand that. There's a need for empathy. So, Captain, with 30 years of experience in the LAPD and service in a variety of leadership and operational roles, you've often spoken about the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership in a profession that has traditionally emphasized traditional toughness or law enforcement. How have empathy, communication, and emotional awareness influenced the way you lead and support the people you work with?
Thank you for that question. Have you guys ever heard the term, don't mistake my kindness as a weakness? Yeah. You know, I've tried to change my personality. I've tried to be something that I thought I was supposed to be with the LAPD, and I wasn't very successful at it. I'm a bright, shining light. I'm happy all the time. I'm grateful of the life that I have, and so I smile and I'm happy and I say hello and you know what I mean? That's just who I am. And so I've learned that being authentic and being who you are is a superpower. And it's also okay in law enforcement or the policing profession, as my dear friend Simon Sinek. Do you guys know who Simon Sinek is?
No.
Okay. He's a fantastic author, and I'm a part of something called The Curve, where we're trying to change culture inside out in policing. And he says the same thing, policing profession. So vulnerability and being authentic of who you are is a superpower. So what I would encourage all of you to is be who you're supposed to be. Don't try to be somebody that you're not or conform to what you think your friends or your teachers or your parents. You are who you are. And never let anybody dim your light. What I like about emotional intelligence and what I've learned for myself is I have introspection and retrospection that I never really paid attention to before. I look at things I've done in the past and I clearly acknowledge what I could do better in my future. I'm sure in your lives so far, you've had some bumps in the road and you got in trouble. Maybe you got disciplined. Maybe you got grounded for something. And the best lessons is learning from them, adapting, overcoming, and continue to move forward. So I think for all of you, look at your life and remember who you are and that you're worthy and you're enough, and don't apologize for anything. We're going to repeat after me. Your opinion is none of my business. Okay? Your opinion of me is none of my business. I want to be liked and I want to be well received, but it could be at the detriment of too much noise. And so at some point as I started to climb, I realized that I'm not going to make everybody happy. Not everybody's going to like me, but I know that I'm worthy and I'm good enough and I'm hard. No one will outwork me. I know that for sure. And because I'm tall, I'm 5'9", and I was an athlete, I've been shooting guns since I was 7 years old. I grew up on a farm. My dad and I went pheasant hunting. I mean, I just knew that there was nobody. If I couldn't do it, then I would fail on my own. No one else needed to put that on me. So I just always believed in myself. And I think the other thing is I never knew what was coming, so I had no expectation. So it was almost like she's a legacy. She had a mom on the job. Most everybody in the LAPD are legacies. What I mean by that, their mother was a cop, their father, their brother, their sister, their grandmother. I had nobody in law enforcement. So, you don't know what you don't know. But I've had really great mentors. Almost all of them were men, and they believed in me, and they were cheerleaders. And the ones that were the haters, and you have haters, right? And sometimes women were the worst on each other. So I tell people, don't come to me if you have a problem with Susie. Go have a conversation with Susie. So I just, those folks that didn't support me or have my back, I just moved on. And I really believed that I could do it, that I wasn't competing with anybody else but myself. And, I was going to do as best I could. And like I told y'all, I failed every test I ever took. And I remember coming home to my husband and just sobbing, just crying, because I thought, wow, I have a college degree. I'm smart, but the tests are different. And so I have support. You know, some of you may tell your family, I want to be a police officer. I know girls who've told their teacher, I want to be a police officer. And they've said, you're 5 feet. You're never going to be a police officer. You should find another dream. And that's hard, right? That's hard when the people that you love are supposed to support you. But guess what? Not everybody's going to be in your corner, and that's okay. How many lives do you get? Whose chapter is it? And every day you turn a page, and every year on your birthday, Mark Twain says the 2 most important days of your life, the day you were born and the day you figure out why. So what is your legacy? Who are you? What's your chapter? Oh, I'm preaching today, y'all. Let's go. Let's go.
And you don't have to figure out your why now. I will share. Women never share their age. I'm 50. I'm still trying to figure out what I need to do when I grow up, right? So Mo, we know about the 30 by 30, and you mentioned it, and it's built on the theory of critical mass. So you're learning today as well. For those who see it as just a recruiting goal, why is that 30% threshold the magic number for moving beyond just including women and actually redefining the narrative of what it means to be a successful officer in modern policing?
Love that question. So I'm going to give you guys 2 pieces of nerdy sociology stuff in case there's any wannabe or current nerds in the room. You are my people. So one thing I want to address really quickly before I directly answer Dr. Nikki's question is because it's come up a few times, and I'm sure some of you are thinking about it in your mind. Sometimes women are really horrible to other women, right? It happens in the workplace. I remember it happening in school when I was in your shoes, right? And I think it can be really easy to get discouraged and to say, oh, well, like, they're never going to support me, or like maybe like a lot of women are flawed people or whatever. I have some good news for y'all. So it's actually just a reflection of a system of oppression. Congratulations. So there's something called the crabs in a bucket theory, which is a sociological construct. And it basically says anytime you have a bunch of crabs in a bucket, if one crab tries to get to the top, all the other crabs are going to pull it back down. Not because crabs are jerks. It's because they're in a bucket. So like focus on getting them out of the dang bucket. Like that's what we're doing at 30 by 30. Like let's stop having these systems that don't equitably support everyone. That's the problem. The problem is not the women. Though it is important to be aware that the sociological thing happens so that you can not fall into that trap and make sure that you show up for your sisters, right? So I just wanted to start there. The other thing that Dr. Nikki said was about this theory of representative bureaucracy. And here's why we're not doing some kind of quota thing. We're not saying like every agency's got to have 30% women recruits. What we're saying is if you eliminate bias and if you meet the needs of your qualified women, you'll naturally see an increase. And we hope that that increases to 30%. And the reason why 30% is so important is because when you have 30% of an underrepresented group in a culture, that's when you get to change the culture. So anything under 30%, you have what the captain described earlier. I'm just trying to change to fit in, right? But at 30%, you get to show up and you actually get to influence that culture for the better and be part of defining what that organization is. So that's what we're trying to achieve.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Diane, I'm coming to you. As a veteran negotiator and a leading voice for reform, you spent years challenging the warrior narrative in policing. How do we redefine strength in public safety so that the soft skills, as they're so called, like the empathy and the de-escalation women so often excel at, are finally valued as elite tactical tools rather than just secondary traits?
Were you at my meeting before here? Because this came up. So a couple of things. Right now, I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called Law Enforcement Action Partnership. And we exist in many aspects because the founders, who were all men, stood up and said, America, the war on drug is a failure. And we have to stop over-policing because it is ruining the relationship that we have between our constituents and the people that we serve. And so we moved as an organization. I started with them in 2010, and I quickly saw how important the soft skill set was, and that very much came to the understanding is that there are times in academy trainings and in trainings that we inherently emphasize the wrong skill set. And so empathy, emotional intelligence, compassion, respect, dignity, all help in de-escalating issues. And you can both be tactically safe, and it is not mutually exclusive to treating someone and de-escalating a problem. We were having this conversation. I team taught with the FBI HR team, did a bunch of work with Mike Hillman, LAPD, and SWAT guys. I did critical incident management, and I would teach with the SWAT dogs, right? The importance of the integration of SWAT and crisis negotiators, and how if we used them effectively, we could save people's lives. You don't want to always, yes, we have the ability to use force up to and including killing people. And I think a problem sometimes in policing is that we emphasize that everyone's a bad guy, everyone's the enemy. And so we treat people who are 80-year-old grandmothers like they're about to pull a gun on us. And I think that's wrong. But I also am not going to diminish that I have friends on that wall. I know a bunch of people sitting out on that wall, and that this job is dangerous, but those two tactics are not mutually exclusive. And until we redefine and emphasize that emotional intelligence and conflict resolution and de-escalation are a hard skill, and start it in the academy with training people just as much on it's important on how to use a baton or a gun or a taser or pursuit training. Those issues from a liability standpoint, when we engage in car accidents that kill cops a lot, or when we kill someone driving in a pursuit because we're not following tactics or policy, when we shoot someone, the trauma that can be inflicted by us, we need to have reverence for life. And how we show it is by emphasizing and training our cops in those skills that we intuitively have. And I've been in an officer-involved shooting. I've lost friends. I have a high respect for the tactical skills needed to be safe, but it's not mutually exclusive. And I still today feel that not everyone's a bad guy. Don't mistake my kindness for weakness, because I'll deal with it. But I have been in situations pulling over bikers who want to challenge me, and I just go, hey, dude, you know, you're going to go to jail. You know it. You can hit me. You can punch me, whatever. But I'm just going to scream into this little microphone, and I'm going to have all my big brothers and sisters. So I don't care, right? I don't care your opinion. You want to go to jail and say you beat the bejesus out of me? You go right ahead. And then people laugh. And so it's the, you know, you're going to come in cuffs one way or the other. Do you want to do it nicely? Let me respect you. And we can do it. But it doesn't mean I don't have the ability to do what I need to do to protect my community, to protect myself, and to protect my brothers and sisters that I served with.
Thank you, Diane. So we heard earlier that there are 18,000 agencies in the United States, and that means there are agencies. We heard a few different types earlier: park police, local police, state-level police, and we have federal law enforcement as well. We mentioned that Catrina is now the president of WIFLE, Women in Federal Law Enforcement. You're at the forefront of the legislative battles that shape the careers of thousands. Drawing from your work there, what is the most pressing policy issue facing federal women officers today, whether it's a recruitment barriers or work-life integration that you believe local and state agencies should also be treating as a top priority?
The last part, I completely agree, because it's not just federal. It's also a lot of priorities for our state and local as well. I could easily say equipment. I could say uniforms. I could say weapons. I could say, all of these things that are specific to women to be able to conform and help support women in their role in policing. But you all came here today because you were going to all of the recruiting tables. Each agency is here. They're showing all the cool stuff of the agency. I think I saw you guys petting one of the canines out there with Park Police or Alexandria. recruiting's not the issue. It really is the retention. Keeping all employees, male and female, but mostly female employees, to have a career with any agency that they're with. We talked about safety and wellness. This is a hard job. It's 24/7, 365, and it's stressful, and you go home and you're exhausted, and how to build and be able to recover so you can go back to work, but also being your best at home so you can be your best at work. Again, recruiting's not the issue. It is because agencies are having an easy time to recruit. It is the retention. It's inflexible schedules. It's caregiving opportunities or caregiving demands. It's being able to balance to be your best at work, but also to be your best at home. I started my job at 22. I never thought I was going to get married. I didn't think about being a mom at some point, but at some point in my career, that flipped. And obviously, while I wanted to continue up the ranks and make my job equally important, I also too wanted to have a home life and be a mom and be a spouse and have an elderly mom that I needed to provide care for, things like that. So these policy issues and how we together through LEAP, through NAWLEE, through MOLLE, through 30 by 30, WIFLE, how we all work to support each other from federal, state, and local is changing those policies, working with agency leadership, changing legislation to allow for those retention initiatives to be at the forefront because those aren't soft issues. Those are mission critical. Those are operational readiness issues. And we should all be allowed to have our best professional life and work hard for your first 10 years and realize, you know what, I have some other priorities coming into my life, and still be able to work hard in all of those priorities and be able to last the last 15 years of your career to have a successful 25-year career. So that's why it's important, you know, as Deputy Chief Brown, as she was able to experience this with Baltimore City Police as the Deputy Commissioner, now she is able to create her own police department with Johns Hopkins, and she's able to take those perspectives of what she learned to be her best at home and to be her best at work, to be able to be allowed to create those policies and those initiatives with the police department at the very beginning to make those initiatives a priority, because that allows her to be able to create an environment for all of her team members to be, again, their best.
And that's a perfect segue to this question. You're in this incredible position right now, building the Johns Hopkins Police Department from a completely clean slate. As you design this new agency for the future, what is one legacy practice from traditional policing that you are intentionally leaving behind to ensure the next generation of women can truly thrive in this profession?
So that's a really good question, because coming from Baltimore Police Department is a larger agency. When by the time you are in command and you meet who your new officers are, it's either at graduation or, unfortunately, because we've had some critical incident on the scene and now you're present. Of course, when it comes to your district, you get to learn them, but there's also in passing and things like that. We're really intentional about who we are hiring. I get to sit with Dr. Bard, who is our chief of police, but also our vice president for public safety, in our final 101 interviews. We literally together interview the candidate, and we both talk about, tell me some things about community. What do you love about community, right? Because that is important for us, that you have a compassion-oriented, centered belief of where community lies with you. Like, we're very community-centered, community-driven, community-focused, the both of us. Now, the goal is, how do we make sure that we are recruiting and retaining as many women as we can as we're bringing women on board? And so we're authorized to have 100 officers. When I started in 24, it was only 4 of us, and that was all command staff. Now we've grown to 34. I'm excited to say that. Thank you. We now have 2 female lieutenants. We don't have a female sergeant yet. I'm working on it. But we have about 6 or 7 that's already female. And we've partnered very early on, from my understanding, even before I got there. Dr. Bard had already partnered with 30 by 30. What I love about 30 by 30, and I think that we don't talk about it enough, and even when I was at Baltimore, it was one of the things that I took on myself. It had been, I don't want to say kicked around, we committed to it, but then we had other leadership that was like, oh yeah, it's just a thing, we're just doing the thing. And I hate to say there was other female leaders, right? And I'm just like, okay, this is critically important, you are missing the mark. Like, you should be leading the charge. I wound up taking it and made the connection and was very, again, intentional about how we're hiring, right? We had an ethics and a diversity director that was there. I called her to my office and say, listen, we're not doing a good job with these things. We started reviewing policy. Anytime that we had job postings, and job postings is no different, and if you're going to interview, you're just doing it internally, especially for our specialized units. And it really became critical for me when I was our colonel over homicide. The way that it was written, it was like, okay, why would I want to come and do this work if you're telling me as a woman or as a caregiver, because it is not even just women, because our men take more and full advantage of the benefits of being new parents, more so than some of our women, because we don't want the stigma. But what I looked at to see was, oh, you don't want some of us here. The way that this is written means that I'm going to be at work all the time. Like, I'm never going to have a break. I'm never going to be able to be home with my young children or even have family time. Started to review and say, I got something. No, this language has to go. Now, I'm not the linguistics person. I'm not the policy writer, but I got with our ethics and diversity director and said, this language is wrong. If I was new and knew what I know now and started applying for these jobs, I wouldn't do it, because you're telling me it's really not the opportunity for me. And so we changed language, we changed our policy, we changed the not only the postings, but then we had to change the process of how folks were getting interviewed. We had to start creating panels where it separated their friends from being on the panel to make sure, oh, my friend is going to be the one that's going to get this job. And so I say that even now it is even better, because I don't even have to be concerned, because our language already supports us as women. And I'll tell you another crazy thing. One of my legacies I did leave being a deputy was being able to wear colored fingernail polish. It was driving me crazy. Our policy didn't support it. Now, that doesn't mean we wasn't doing it, ladies, because we were. But the problem is, if you had a supervisor who wanted to discipline you, it was the easiest way for them to do it. If they could not discipline you for something else, that policy is out there. Our policy now, where I am at Hopkins, already supports us to be 100% of us in who we are. And any of our ladies that's sitting here will tell you, they wanted us to be them. We couldn't wear earrings, which was the craziest thing. We had a time and period. We couldn't do that. Our hair, we had to have a law that says, hey, support us. Because if we want to go natural, we can. Now, when I started, that's not how my hair was. My hair was very, very long, flowing, natural, all those things. But it was like, no, you had to bun this up. You had to put this up. We get it. Safety, yes. We understand. But you're telling us these things that are relational in some spaces, and let us just be identifiably us. You wanted us to take it away. I show up as Mo all the time. Probably sometimes my folks may have looked at me and be like, is she really our deputy? Because this lady is crazy. But I'm always going to show up as me, because we should. And then meeting other leaders through a lot of our organizations. We have one who has written a book that says, I'm always going to wear my ruby woo, right? Lipstick? Who you walking around with lipstick on? Girl, what did you do? You trying to be cute for? That was how they talk to you. Lashes, like, you never going to see me out here without my lashes. Ever. Like, if you ever see me out here with my lashes, please check on me, because something ain't right. So I say all of those things, like, they try to remove it. So when we're talking about how do we make sure that we encourage you young ladies that's in this audience to say, hey, come join us. You heard Captain Rodriguez say, be authentic. I am authentically me everywhere that you go, every space that we go into. I'm a new captain in my new little district, and I'm walking around and I'm like, oh, we have this huge disconnect with community. And, they're just like, yeah, we don't really fuck with them. Oh, okay, I got something for you. Safe Streets, which is a great violence intervention group that we have in Baltimore. We're having sponsoring this event in that area. And I was like, oh, come on, we should just go to the event. I pull up, get out my car. I'm just sassy and my little stuff. Like, hey, y'all, what's going on? They looked at me like, why are you here? We didn't invite you. We don't fool with the police. You might as well get back in your little car and go on, because I said, yeah, okay, that ain't how this works. We in the shared space, and we going to figure out how we gonna get along. And they like, yeah, we really don't want you here. Not going nowhere. So I had an incident, unfortunately. I had a 7-year-old shot. I was upset. Nobody was giving me information. I go back into the same area, because it's their area. And I'm like, y'all not telling me nothing, nobody helping me. And they're like, that's your job. Y'all do the investigation. That ain't our job to come tell you anything. So I called one of our great roots of the community. I look at her as like a grandma. I call her because everybody she knows, and said, I need you to get me into a room to have this conversation because it's not gonna be pretty. I'll meet them wherever they want me to meet them. I'm gonna come dressed down. Nobody's gonna know that it's me. Whatever they want to do, but we need to get in this room. We had a few choice words. Wasn't pleasant. We probably almost came to blows a couple of times. But I can tell you from then on, whenever they had an event, it was like, well, I ain't say you had an event. What happened? They on my phone. Are you coming? Where you at? But when they saw me, it would be like, I know you ain't walking past me and ain't giving me no hug. You ain't say hi. What is happening? So I say that to say authenticity, genuineness, collaboration, right? Making sure, and I do believe I have another little catchphrase I like to say, as we rise, we're supposed to lift others. We're not supposed to leave anybody else behind. That's how crabs get out the bucket. Hold on. When I fall out, you come with me. Any of my girlfriends or any other female in my agency, I celebrated them like I was getting promoted. Because I was. It wasn't just the one of us, it's the all of us. And so when we're talking about that, you have to make sure that whatever you're creating, it doesn't create a barrier to say that we're not welcome. Because we are supposed to be welcome. And yes, it gets competitive, but why are we competing? I'm going to choose collaboration over competition all the time. You know why? Because if you make it, that means you're going to make sure I'm making it. Because we're not going to let the barrier stand. We're going to get in front of it and say, nope, that's not okay. I ain't okay with that. And even if we still want to have some folks, because some folks is a little ambitious and you can't change that. Let them have their way. You ain't got to get in that way. And you don't have to feel like, no. Go ahead, you got it. But I'm going to keep on doing the good things and the good work that I'm doing here. And so just make sure that whatever system that you are in, you have to tear it down. You got to get involved with it. You can't stay on the outside and say, oh, yeah, it's going to fix itself. It ain't. You're going to have to get in the system and say, yeah, that's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. Even if you're the only person saying it, it's okay. Because you know what? Everybody else will start to look at themselves, like you say, introspection, retrospection. Yeah, what's wrong with this? And don't think our male counterparts are always against us, because some of them are not. Some of my best partners and best mentors have been men. They bring allyship in a way that we never realize we need. One, they can get into the room and be like, nope, and advocate for you in a way that sometimes, even though we're sitting there, others are not listening. Your ideas can be brought to the table. What you want to do can be brought to the table from them. So get involved. When you see wrong, that's why many of us have taken this job. We don't like to see wrong on the other side. And we have come in and made sure that we have put ourselves in the system and became the framework to say, yep, if it's not like this, then we're going to fix it.
But I want you all to recognize the brilliance and importance that's on this panel, and the importance of having a deputy chief at the helm of starting a brand new law enforcement agency. I think one of my dreams is for the United States to have a police department with only women. I'm unapologetic about that. I'm married. I love my husband, but they can step aside now. And we will do fine. But I want you all to recognize also that the women on this panel are trailblazers. They build bridges. They break down walls. And that's really important. We have one more question, and then we're going to open up for questions from the audience. Diane, you wanted to say something?
Is that there's no egos here. And so the reason why I love working with women like this is no one takes credit for, it was my idea. I'm the person who started this. There's something so impactful when you get people into a room that sheds that ego and said, let's talk about the people we serve, whether they're in the department or outside the department. And it doesn't matter whose idea it is. It's how can I support your idea, which is great today, or your idea, which is great tomorrow. And I think critically, we all need to learn to shed our egos. And that's what I love about policing is the people that we've been really successful with have shed those egos and said, how do we fix a system and how do we make it perfect or better or as close to what our visions are? So I really want to thank you guys for an amazing, like, it fuels my purpose. And I think that's what's really important here. We want to fuel your purpose.
And we'll end with the last formal question to Julie. I wanted to just add to what Diane says as well. From my own research, it takes time. To be able to shed the ego, it takes time. Did any of us know what we wanted to do in our 20s? Possibly not. In our 30s, maybe not. We're at the point now in our lives where we do not give a hoot. I'm with children, so I'm using a proper word. We don't give a hoot about what people say. I should have said, similar to Mo, I'm not a sworn police officer. I worked in the Philadelphia Law Enforcement Agency for 3 years doing reform work, but a lot of my work has been working alongside Mo and working in other spaces in policing. And the importance of having support, the importance of not being scared, the importance of saving a seat for a sister, the importance of taking a table with you if there's none in the room is what we've all learned along the way. Julie, in your position, you're looking at things at the national level, similar to McGough. You're looking at the national landscape every single day. My own research, again, on saving a seat for a sister, focuses on how we intentionally create space for the women coming up behind us. For the young people in the audience today, what do you see as the most critical opportunity for growth they should be seizing right now to truly redefine what it means to lead in this field?
Thank you. So I think, my last comment, which was a great question, was really going to be my response to this answer, that, you just need to not worry about what other people think. And I know I have a 19-year-old daughter, so I watched her go through as a young woman in high school, and high school is a brutal time. There's a lot of jealousy, a lot of peer pressure. And so as you guys move through your life, number one, the 3 men that are sitting here, remember that when people are talking negatively about women, that you're allies and you're advocates. You're in spaces that we're not. We could talk about relationships and how you can have a relationship and that's awesome. We have 1 or 2 and we're given a different name for it. So that continues in law enforcement. In 30 years, I've never dated a police officer because I knew that if I did and it didn't work out, that people would say maybe could have said something about me or that I got a job because of it. So I was very intentional to not date. Shame on me. What if I did date somebody in law enforcement? In fact, most of the women I know now are married to cops because they understand the job. They understand we carry a gun, our long hours. I was a lieutenant for 12 years by choice because I wanted to take my kids to school every day. So I postponed promotion for a long time. And before I was the president of NAWLEE, I was on the Los Angeles Women's Police Officers Affinity Organization. And what I learned to understand is that for women, we have a lot of sacrifice. And we also have to set a lot of boundaries in a career, in a career in law enforcement. One of the things is maternity uniforms. So I created the maternity closet so that every woman who was pregnant would have a maternity uniform for free, so that we could actually show women in a uniform so young girls could go, oh, I never knew I could be a cop and be pregnant. Absolutely, you could. I got our chief early on in the Los Angeles Police Department to sign 30 by 30. Still to this day, if you watch movies and TV shows, the LAPD uniform is known all over the world. We have no patches on our arm. I don't know if you ever recognize that, but it's because we were one of the first law enforcement agencies, not only in the country, but in the state of California. So every agency that came on after us to distinguish themselves or differentiate themselves put a patch. So we don't have one. We are not allowed to wear any kind of nail polish that is not of a neutral color, and we still do not wear earrings. And I'm good with it. And I'm good with it because we've been around since 1869, and that uniform to us represents something. So we also cannot have any visible tattoos. So for the communities in which we serve, we want to, for us, we want to still represent this professional environment. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have long nails and you can't have a French manicure, but you can't have black nail polish or pink nail polish. And you can't have earrings. Now, remember, my daughter, she has 3 on each side. So the question becomes, if you wear earrings, can you only have one? Can the men wear earrings? There's a whole conversation about it. So your question, what does the future look like? I think it's going to look different. I think these conversations need to continue to be had, but recognize in different parts of the country and creating a new agency, and also looking at a culture that's had an agency around for 170 years, there's still going to be some trials and tribulations. And so look at the agencies or look at the jobs that you want, and does it fit who I am as a person? Because that's also important. Where you're going, is it going to be open to me? Am I going to have opportunities and success? So I don't expect any of you to know what you want to do yet, but look at the options when it comes to schooling, where you want to go to school. What does that culture look like at the school you want to go to? I think those are all something that you all should consider.
Julie, we'll start with you 1 minute each or less because they have to leave soon.
Don't start your life in debt. If you can go to junior college, I would go to junior college. It's the same education, and that'll give you 2 years to kind of figure it out. But what I tell people is find the person doing the job and ask them for 10 minutes of your time and ask them this question: what one advice would you give yourself? So there are a lot of different opportunities: probation, parole, corrections, Secret Service, FBI, local law enforcement. Go spend some time with those people and see what they do and ask them what they do and what a normal day looks like. So I would say definitely do that. Everybody has 10 minutes and they'll be delighted to talk to you, just like any of us would.
I would offer, if you're going to pursue the profession, one, it's not all about the sworn positions. It's not about 7 months in a police academy where you're going to carry a weapon and you're going to be patrol. There are administrative, professional, technical, forensics, prosecutor. There are plenty of other professions within law enforcement agencies. So it's not just about being sworn, and honestly, sworn positions are probably the smallest percentage. It is about the administrative, professional, technical. But as you're finishing high school, as you're pursuing your college career, know that at some point you're going to be questioned about your decision at any point in your life. So just be mindful of that. You might be going to parties, all of that other stuff, but some of the agencies that you're going to go and apply for, you're going to have to do a background check. Some you may have to take a poly. So just be mindful of your choices and your decisions may come back even in posting in social media. So just think about that if this is a profession you want to pursue, because you never want to be in your 20, whenever you pursue 22, 23, sitting at a table and someone is questioning, have you ever done this, and you have to say yes. Obviously, the profession's changed and we accept different, behavior and it's transformed, but just keep that in mind because it could be a disqualifier and you might not actually have this possibility that you actually worked hard for.
Similar to ROTC programs in colleges, especially in high schools, is a lot of law enforcement agencies have cadet programs. So 1983 I started we had a very active cadet program. We would go out to our high schools and recruit kids in who were potentially interested in law enforcement. So you may not be too old for a cadet program now, but there's also intern possibilities as you go into college. Go knock on the door of your local law enforcement agency and say, hey, I'd love to talk to someone in recruiting. And they will open the door for you and say, hey, this is what policing is about. Go on ride-alongs if you can once you turn 18. Really think about exposing yourself to the world because you may not want to be a cop. And to the point about sworn and non-sworn, there's a lot of really good non-sworn positions that are really, really valuable.
And we have one other question, but I would love for you want to answer this question. What I'll say is your decisions that you make now definitely will reflect into your hiring. So I think you try to touch on it. The partying, marijuana, and it's not so much as the law enforcement agency, because let me tell you something, faced with recruitment issues, it is being talked about a lot. It is a certification process that will not allow you to have used as if you are like a user every day, even, and not just marijuana. I'm talking about gummies, I'm talking about the mushrooms, I'm talking about all those things. So just definitely be cognizant of those. Cadet programs is definitely the right way to go, especially if you're looking at it now. You get paid. They do require you to go to, most of them, majority, 2 years administrative college, junior college. And then if you're looking for a profession, I mean, Hopkins, we're hiring. And we have 100% tuition reimbursement. Yes.
So I'm going to take it up a macro level, like regardless of what career you guys go into. So I'm a pretty nice lady, but I, over the course of my career, fired a lot of people too. And the reason why is because they're not dependable. All of this work is hard. Like any place that you're going into, they are going to need good people. It is hard to hire good people. And if I was interviewing somebody and they said to me, like, I'm a person of my word, and if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I won't always get it right, but I'm here to learn and work hard. I would give them like all my money. I would take a pay cut to hire that person. So think about becoming that person too.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to the panelists. I had a lovely closing speech. I won't, because you heard enough. Have a safe journey. Be well. Be good.
Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444@nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the precinct.